if you are sitting here right now and you're like, oh, I really want my life to be better. Oh, I really want a different job, or I really want a more juicy, fulfilling relationship, or I want a greater community or better friends. It's up to you and only you to take inventory of your life and ask yourself, am I settling? Is this something that truly brings me joy and lights me up? Or when I feel it in my body, does it not truly feel expansive? We're back, baby, with a brand new season of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. Join us each week as we have unfiltered conversations about how to transform your life. Our mission is to usher in a new era of spirituality where you don't have to be all love and light to live a life of alignment. Here, we honor all of it, the profound and the profane, the magic and the messy, and all things that make you human. So let's discuss the truth behind transformation and be unapologetic in our evolution. From manifestation to money, embodiment to energy, and all taboo topics, nothing is going to be off limits. Are you ready to live a life that feels just as good as it looks? Let's get fucking spiritual. Hey, what's up, my loves? Welcome back to another episode of the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast, a short and sweet solo clip today. And I was thinking about what I wanted to do this episode on today. And there's something that keeps coming up in the themes with working with my clients and my students inside of my program. And that is, how do we actually attract to us what it is that we desire? And the way that we do that is through creating magnetism, creating a magnetic field. You hear about this, right? It's like we're all in an electromagnetic field, and what we're putting out is also what we're getting back. It's the same thing as saying law of attraction. But how do we become magnetic? You all know those people who walk into a room and they light up a room and you just feel instantly drawn to them. Or you know the times that you've felt like that and you are on fire and you feel aligned and you feel like everything is just going well, or you feel that spark within you, that spark of aliveness, right? So today I want to break down, how do you actually create magnetism? So it's not some elusive thing that is out there, right? It's not something that other people have that you don't have. It's not something that is not something that you can create, right? Actually learn, how do I create magnetism? How do I generate it? And how do I do it deliberately and intentionally? And what are the steps? And I also thought we would maybe go over a little bit about how I've done this in my own life, because if you're new here, which there are so many new listeners here, so hi, welcome. Maybe you don't know parts of my story, or maybe you're a longtime listener and I could give you a refresher, like little nuggets of how I've done this in my own life, because truly every single time that I've up-leveled, that I've created anything, that I've quantum leaped, that I've changed my life in any way, it has been on the other end of creating magnetism. So this is a 2-step process. Number 1, you have to stop settling for your current circumstance or your current life. In all the ways that you feel that you are settling, you feel like you're just allowing good enough to be good enough, but deep in your soul, you know it could be more expansive, you know it could be juicier, you know it could be better. We're going to go into what that means. And number 2, you have to jump off the cliff before you feel ready. You got to jump. You got to jump and trust that the net will appear. You have to know that anything that you're going to do that is going to expand you is going to require a leap of faith. It's going to require you stepping into the unknown. It's going to require that you jump and trust that the net will appear. And these 2 things have been really huge in my own life and on my journey. And when I think back to every single thing I've ever done that has led me here, sitting in a podcast studio, filming to all of you, when I think about that, it's come on the heels of creating magnetism in my life. becoming magnetic to what it is that I actually want. And I've had to leave an old life that I was settling in and step into jumping off of a cliff and trusting that I would be able to build my parachute on the way down. And maybe you can think of something in your own life. Maybe you're settling in a relationship. Maybe you're settling in a job. Maybe you're just settling for mediocre and feeling mediocre in your day and feeling just not lit up by life. Or maybe you're settling for bad habits and bad money habits or bad spending habits, bad eating habits, bad um, anything habits, right? Anything that's holding you back. Maybe you're settling in that way. And typically we settle because we're afraid, because things are good enough, because we're creatures of habit and comfort. And nothing's wrong with you. It just simply means that you're human. And it's really important that you take inventory. That if you are sitting here right now and you're like, oh, I really want my life to be better. Oh, I really want a different job, or I really want a more juicy, fulfilling relationship, or I want a greater community or better friends. It's up to you and only you to take inventory of your life and ask yourself, am I settling? Is this something that truly brings me joy and lights me up? Or when I feel it in my body, does it not truly feel expansive? And maybe asking yourself, what is it that I'm afraid would happen if I let this thing go? And whatever answer that you find, you get to feel those fears, feel those feelings, feel the fear that it's not going to get better than here. Feel the fear of what if it never happens for me? What if I walk away from something good? Because all of those are just indicators that your little inner child needs some tending to and needs some love. And then you, as the adult you, as your true self, get to ask your soul, what is actually most expansive for me in this moment? And then it's your job to actually trust and surrender. And then step 2, step into the unknown and identify what it is that you actually want. So I'll give you an example from my own life. This was when I first started this journey. And if you don't know what started me on this journey, I was in the middle of an 8-year downward spiral, drug and alcohol abuse, very tumultuous relationships, didn't have good friends around me. I was fresh out of college and was working a corporate job that I hated, 80 hours a week in sales, burnt out. My hair was falling out. I was not healthy at all. Mind, body, soul were all disconnected. I was completely dissociated from my body, and I had absolutely no idea what self-development work was. I had no idea. I had never listened to a podcast. I didn't know about mindset work. I'd literally never heard of this entire industry in my whole life. I did not grow up with this stuff. And one day I was having a particularly challenging day at work. And I will never forget, I called my mom on the phone, absolutely bawling hysterically, just saying, I wish time would stop so I can think. I feel like I'm running on a hamster wheel and I just want my life to be better and it's not. And I want to make something of my story, right? And also was very much in a victim mentality at the time, but didn't know it. And as the universe would have it, your wish is my command. 2 weeks later, I was in a freak accident and I shattered my knee, and it forced me to take 3 months medical leave. Now, at this time, I was pissed, okay? I was so angry. I was so mad. Thought, are you kidding me? One more thing. And then 2 weeks into my recovery, I'm laying in bed, had to move back in with my mom, had a cast from my hip to my ankle, and couldn't walk, couldn't move, couldn't take care of myself. And I had this moment of faith. It's almost this divine guidance and intuitive knowing. And I would not have used this language at the time, but it was like that hit of inspiration. And I realized I just got my wish. I wished for time to slow down so I could think. So if I use this time wisely, maybe I can change my life. And in that moment, I grabbed my computer and I Googled how to be happy. Now, what I will say is what I didn't know at this time, that was a fleeting moment of faith. That was a moment of jumping off the cliff. So when I say jump off a cliff, sometimes, yes, it's the big cliff. It's quitting your job. It's breaking up with your partner. It's making the move across the country. And that's usually what people would define as taking a big leap. And what I want to presence is taking a leap of faith and jumping off a cliff. You can jump off baby cliffs in micro moments. And this was one of those micro moments where I grabbed my computer and I believed in a future that was greater than the future now, just enough to Google how to be happy. I searched for something and I leaned into my intuition. And it's so small, but it's so profound because in that moment, I listened to the nudge and the whisper. And so much of our life is built in listening to the nudges and the whispers that feel expansive, stepping into the unknown. Sometimes it's a huge cliff and sometimes it's a molehill. But it's about following those micro moments. And if I had not followed that micro moment, we would not be here nearly 7 years later, me sitting on this camera talking to you. So in that moment, I Google how to be happy. And I find self-development and I find mindset work. And I end up committing to laying in bed for 3 months, not watching Netflix, not doing anything else, not distracting myself, not taking the pain medication, but sitting in bed and reading books and listening to my first ever podcasts, because I just discovered what those were, and studying how people made it out of challenging situations. How did they create a life for themselves? How did they financially provide for themselves and create their own businesses? How did they start podcasts? And I just laid in bed and I studied and I studied and I studied. Fast forward many, many months later, and I've now healed my leg, but I'm still now this sponge of knowledge. And what I'll say is I did not go off and immediately launch this podcast. This podcast didn't come for another 4 years. But what I did was I kept taking the leap and I kept taking the leap. And this was maybe 8 months later. Actually, maybe like 10 months later from my first shattering of my leg. It was toward the end of the year and I was listening to a podcast. And on this podcast, it's so funny because it was actually Angie Lee, who's now been on this show. So such a full circle moment. But I was listening to a podcast and on this podcast, Angie said, guys, I'm hosting this big 2,000 person event and, it's all going to be women entrepreneurs and we're going to hang out together for 4 days. We're going to have workshops. We're going to talk about how to build businesses. You can network. You can do all these things. You should come. And it's a Tuesday that I'm listening to this. And she's like, listen, you can still come. There's still time. We start in 2 days. It starts on Thursday. And in the moment, I had never invested in myself ever before. I had never flown across the country by myself. I had never gone to an entrepreneurial event. I wasn't even an entrepreneur at this point. And something inside of me said, jump, go. So in that moment, I said no to settling to what I currently had, which was this job that I absolutely hated, that was burning me into the ground. And I was standing for a greater future. And I said, you know what? I'm going to jump off this cliff. I got on the computer, I booked, I think I put it on a credit card. I was like floored that I was going to spend thousands of dollars going to this event where I didn't consider myself an entrepreneur. Well, I wasn't one at the time. And I was going to go be in a room of 1,000 women, entrepreneurs, and I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I book it on a Tuesday. I fly out on a Thursday. I'm in a Facebook group of women staying with a bunch of women that I don't know. And I don't even have an Instagram account at this time. But I had a dream and I had a desire that one day I would create this. Briefly interrupting this episode to invite you into the Expanded Woman Retreat that's happening in Austin, Texas in just a couple of weeks. if you are somebody that you know you are on the edge of your next breakthrough, you're ready for your next level expansion, you don't want to just be self-aware and listening to all the podcasts, but you're actually ready to put all of this into action and you're ready to go deep within your body and being and become the next up-leveled version of you, I invite you to join us. Honestly, retreats have been the thing that have changed my life personally. And every single big thing that I have done, every single big breakthrough that I have had has come off of the heels of taking 3 to 4 days and going inward and going, with myself, being held in sisterhood and having a huge breakthrough. And it's come after retreats. So I'm really excited to be facilitating this for the women that are joining. And if you are somebody that has heard about the retreat and you really feel a soul knowing that you're meant to be there, you feel a full body yes, but maybe you held yourself back, whether that be for financial reasons or just something was blocking you, I do have an announcement. We officially have opened a partial scholarship opportunity for those that maybe just want a little more financial assistance. It is the absolute joy of my life to facilitate these spaces, and I really want to make it as accessible as possible as I can. And so we have opened a partial scholarship application for just a few ladies who would like to join us. So if that is you, go to the show notes and apply for that. We're just going to have a couple of days left since it is at the end of August. So definitely jump on that ASAP if you want to get a partial scholarship to join us. And you can also DM me on Instagram the word apply, and I will send you the scholarship application. And with that, I hope you join us and we'll get back to the episode. And if you're listening to this right now, I promise you that you have a dream and a desire. And maybe there's one that's at the forefront of your mind right now, and you're like, damn, I really am settling in this area. Or wow, I've been so scared to take the leap. Here's the thing, if that is you, whether that's scared to take the leap in actually starting your online business or scared to take the leap in saying yes to the type of relationship that you actually want, or walking away from a partner, or saying yes to moving across the country and taking a different job, or doing any type of big change in your life, it's gonna feel scary. It never doesn't feel scary to me. Still, 7 years later, I'm still jumping off cliffs. I'm still saying no to things. I'm still having to take inventory of where am I settling in my life? What is not working still? Albeit it's different, right? It's different now. I'm not going from absolutely hating my life to good, right? And trying to climb out of a hole. Now I have a beautiful life that I've created. Now it's about saying no to things that are really working to stand for something extraordinary. And that's a whole other podcast. That is a whole other leap because when you've really created beauty for yourself, that's a whole other thing to say no to stand for something even more extraordinary. But if you're in the space of whatever it is, even if it is saying no to something that's kind of good or kind of working or good enough, can you stand for something extraordinary? Can you stand for an even greater future and the way that you want to feel? It is not going to feel comfortable. It's going to feel maybe like you want to throw up. But if you tune into your body, does it feel expansive? And so I fly out to this event and I'm sitting there in a room of a bunch of entrepreneurial women who I literally am like, I don't know what's going on. I don't have a framework for how any of this works. I don't even have an Instagram account. And I'm sitting in the audience and I'm watching Angie on stage with a bunch of incredible speakers. And I sit there and I think to myself, I'm going to write myself into this narrative. I'm going to write myself into this story. I'm going to write myself into being on this stage one day or stages like it. But I don't even have an Instagram. So I didn't know the how. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know the way it was going to pan out. But at that event, it's so funny now. If you go back and listen to me in Angie's episode, I talked about it on the show. There was a meet and greet, and there's a picture of me and Angie at this meet and greet like 6 years ago. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, this is wild. I've listened to you on a podcast. And now she's a dear friend of mine many, many years later. And I did exactly what I said I would do. I wrote myself into this narrative. I created the life that I wanted. I'm sitting here in my studio on my show talking to you. And that's not by coincidence. And that's not because I'm someone special. It's because I chose not to settle for a life that just felt good enough or for a life that was draining the fuck out of me. And I chose to step into the unknown, and I chose to jump off the cliff over and over and over again. I chose to believe in myself. I chose to say yes to things that felt scary. I chose to invest in my expansion and getting in the room. And at that event, the women that I was staying with in the Facebook group, I had shared with them my desire and my dream for one day posting on social media and sharing my story. And they held me to it and they said, do not leave here. We will not let you leave here until you post your very first Instagram telling your story. And it was so freaking scary. It was so scary. And it's so cute to me now because I look back at that version of myself and I have so much love and compassion for her. At the time, I couldn't even imagine posting my story on the internet. It made me literally want to vomit. And now it's second nature. That's my job, right? So it's incredible what happens and the magnetism that we create and what we manifest in our lives when we choose to step through the door of the unknown and we go for it. And we believe in something greater. And we choose to have faith and we choose to surrender. And that was the start of everything for me. And that event led me to becoming connected with women where 3 months later I'd go to my first retreat. And at that retreat, those women taught me how to make money online and how it looked. And at that retreat, I made my first $250 on the internet, which was just insane to me at the time. It took me like an hour after they told me what to do and here, create this offer. And I was like, what? You do what? How? And an hour later, I'd made $250 in my DMs. And I thought, this is wild. This is a whole world that I didn't know about. But had I not chosen to jump off the cliff, had I not chosen to put myself in the room, had I not chosen to do the thing that was hard and scary and made me vulnerable, I wouldn't be sitting here now with you. And there's so many other examples that I could give you in this podcast throughout the years where I've chosen to say no, where I've chosen to not settle, where I've chosen to jump off the cliff and it being really scary. Moving to Austin being one of those things, not quite 2 years ago. Starting this podcast being one of those things. And it doesn't get, for me at least, for some people maybe it gets easier, but for me, like it always kind of feels scary. It's always another up level. There's always some discomfort there. And so whatever it is that you want to create in your life, know that it's going to be uncomfortable. Know that it's going to require you to have some faith and to do the thing that you wouldn't normally do. Practice contrary action. If you usually stay small, if you usually people please, if you usually go into like, oh, I don't need to do that right now, and you put it off for later. Practice doing the opposite. What would it look like if it all worked out? Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, you're human. Yes, there's going to be obstacles. Yes, not everything's going to go as planned and on your timeline. It certainly hasn't been the case for me. But do I choose this hard? Or do I choose the hard of living a life that is completely out of alignment with my soul? So I hope that this episode gives you some things to think about today. In what areas of life are you settling? You say you want an abundant life. You say you want to get ahead with money. You say that you want to start your own business. You say that you want a deep, fulfilling, beautiful relationship. You say that you want to feel so good in your body. What are you settling for that's currently not working? What habits and ways of being and ways of thinking are you settling for that's currently not working? And what is it that you actually want? And then what are the things that you get to do to shift it? What's the next best step? You don't need to know how. But if you actually sat down and gave thought and intention to what it is that you want to create in your life, sit down, write a list. Here's all the places that I'm settling. Here is what I actually really desire. If there was no constraints, here's what I would want. And then go out and start finding people that have done those things. Go out and do something different. Go out and even just the way of thinking. What's the way of thinking? What's my way of being? What is one small thing that I can shift in my life today to create more magnetism? What is something that I can do that can stretch myself, that can push me to proving to myself that I can do it? What's that next habit? What's that next action? What do I need to let go of and what do I need to create? So I hope that this episode resonated with you. I hope that you can think of something in your own life that you're ready to let go of, or that you're ready to transmute or transform. And I hope that you can also feel into what's that next best expansive action that will really allow you to step into your own magnetism. Because when you do that, and here's the last thing I'll say, when you do that, it creates confidence in you. It proves to you that you can do the hard and scary thing. It proves to you that the universe will show up for you when you do. It'll prove to you that nobody else out there is different than you. Because you'll keep showing up and you keep showing up and you'll gain more confidence and you'll gain more clarity. And then you get to do that on repeat over and over and over again. And if you have it on your heart and you desire to join us at the Expanded Woman Retreat next week, I'm going to give you a shameless plug right now. We have one scholarship application left, or a spot left. So go to the show notes and apply if you want to join us. It's in 1 week. So you could pull a me with Angie Lee, and maybe one day we will be sitting on your podcast or whatever it is that you want, and we'll be connecting. And so if that's something that you desire, if you want to take the leap, if you want to get in the room with us, if you're ready to go really deep within yourself and let go of what is no longer serving you, and you're ready to step into your magnetism, I invite you to join us if it's calling you. You can also DM me on Instagram at Rachel Gibbler, and we can chat it through. And with that, it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to sit here and think of myself 6 to 7 years ago and think of myself when I was in the audience looking up and saying, I really want to write myself into this narrative. I really want to do this work. And to be sitting here now in my podcast studio, in my home, on a podcast that connects me to thousands of you every single week. Being able to have the privilege to create spaces like this, where women like you can heal. Spaces that have helped me heal. And I get to facilitate that. It's a dream come true. And I want your dreams to come true too, whatever those may be. So with that, I'll leave you with this. And step into your magnetism because you deserve it. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you for listening to the It's Fucking Spiritual podcast. I am so glad that you're here. And if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to share this with a friend that you feel needs to hear it. And if you are really feeling the love and support for this show, this podcast thrives off of your listens and your reviews. So I would love if you could leave us an honest review. We would love to hear your feedback, your thoughts, your questions, And it helps us get this podcast in the hands of more people and would mean so much to me to receive your support. So thank you.